most people, because most people can't really afford to participate in markets.
Exactly right. In the literature, that's called an oligarch. And in America, we had one doing before the Civil War, where the slave owners in the South, less than 1% owned most of the wealth, and that was defeated by the Civil War. And then we had another one with FDR going against the Rockefellers and the Fords and et cetera, of which they defeated the oligarchs there. And now we're there again. So if you want to do a comparison between, say, the oligarchs of the old South in slavery, and then compare that to, but it's all based around the development of a new technology. So the Rockefellers and the Fords was around automobiles and petroleum and et cetera. And if you go back and look at all of the, all of the worker union riots and et cetera, if you look at all of the marches on Washington by the veterans, that idea was that, how could so few people own so much of the wealth? And now I think we had another position with what I call the cloud capitalism. So you're exactly right. I think we are at that position now where the cloud has made it, such that individuals could do that. But the flip side of that is the wealth is increasing very rapidly now. That is, those entrepreneurs who understand the web, who understand cloud computing, who understand cloud capitalism. It is also, I have never seen so many new companies that's developed. And by the way, it is worldwide. So I just finished a book chapter on
globally, but John, I just came back from a conference which was lamenting the lack of startups in Europe. Michu, maybe you could give us some idea of the kinds of companies. You don't have to give us the names, but the kinds of companies that you are helping.
Sure. So in the climate space, so I just published a guide, which is just a guide because it's a PDF and because it's free and because you can download it on our website. But it's really a riff on what would it look like for climate technologies to cross the chasm, and what's getting in the way of that. And it comes from, I started with a couple of conversations, and that couple of conversations turned into, I think, almost 80 to 90 interviews with either founders or C-suite folks or investors who were telling me about all the things that they wish were happening in climate tech, what more people understood about what they're selling and what their frustrations are. And these patterns really became evident, right? And what is missing in a nutshell, sort of the big picture thing, is the failure to understand that that there is a moment where the scientific certainty stops and the human chaos begins, and being unable to cross over between the two is never going to be, it is the recipe for failure. And so the companies that I have historically helped have, kind of run the gamut from giant tech companies, the FANGs and so on, to global nonprofits and foundations, and then moving into this niche of either new category creation. How do you, sort of figure out how to find an audience for a new category or a category of product that people don't really know how to place or how to use or how to integrate into their lives, and build a market for that. And in the climate space, it's how do you make it obvious how do you make that these new technologies, or not even that new, mature technologies that sort of fly under the banner of better for the environment and better for climate, actually mean something to people, and they can evaluate it in a way that makes them excited, as opposed to just feel the risk of something new, right? Nobody wants to spend $20,000 on heating and cooling for their house and feel like they are making the ethical choice, but putting their entire investment at risk.
Thank you. I wonder, I like what Johnny says about giving data its voice. I think Johnny did right there. And I was just wondering how you see that voice. Interestingly, I had an example of that at the Los Alamos National Laboratory years ago. It wasn't classified, but they took the data from a nuclear detonation and turned it into a two-dimensional thing that looked like a kid's kaleidoscope, so that they could see things in the data that they couldn't read in the data as data. Now they could read it today with AI. I wonder if you could give me an example, or give us an example rather, of how you see the voice of data.
Well, how do I see the voice in data? So I'll
Even
give
the
you
specific setting.
I'm trying to think about like which one would be most interesting and maybe helpful in the context of this conversation. And I think in general, for example, in the climate space, the climate problem is a huge problem, right? Like, and not even in the climate space, in the realm of humanity and continued existence on the planet, climate is an issue. But it's also a slow-moving issue that depends on everybody being in agreement to do things differently, and the scale of the problem and the length of time it would take to repair it just feels impossible. It's the kind of thing that that humanity typically endorses to the divine, to like God. It's not something that we feel like we can really fix. So the interpretation of the data, like how you make action and selection and choice more obvious, is how you then sort of distill the data of like, well, we have to reduce emissions by so and such. And so if we switch the grid over to all these things, to these technologies and this timeline, and then people start to eat more vegetables, then that's still too big of a scale of the data. Like that is a math that works for everyone, but resonates with no one. So sort of bringing down the data to like, well, what that means for you is maybe let's make some delicious vegetable pre-made meals that are on offer. How do you bring that down to practice in the scale of time and space and relevance that is going to make the difference? Because the intention is meaningless.
Thank you. Very interesting.
So,
So Michu, real quick,
Yeah.
Michu. Are you using AI internally?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you find yourself that your customers wanting you to also become a teacher and help me how to learn how to use AI and manage it better, or not really? What is going on there?
Sometimes. I think, for example, AI is very compelling for repetitive tasks and also for creating less of a burden. So when you are, a lot of the mix of work that we do is not just creating brand identities from brand strategy that then helps companies go from sale level scales to scaling up in the market. But rather, you leave someone with 14 templates, and then that's going to go out to 1,000 people, and people are going to use that template, and that template's going to be ruined in about a week if you're lucky. But if you sort of incorporate AI into the mix, and you, instead of creating something that is fragile, you create a tool that is protective of the brand, then they have a fighting chance. So that's one way that like I will teach our clients how to use tools that have been created for them that incorporate AI that will make them be better stewards of their brand.
Michu, this is very, very interesting. I'm afraid I have to leave early, and I have advised my colleagues of that. It was a delight being with you, and forgive me
Likewise.
for departing early. Sorry, Andre. Sorry, John.
See you, Llewellyn.
See you, Llewellyn. We love you. Take care.
Likewise, dear friend.
So Michu, in your thoughts of circling back to clean energy, what have you, what do you think is the hardest roadblock of why isn't energy a more transformational place or a faster place?
I'm gonna say something that's gonna maybe get me in a lot of trouble, but I think it's a self-inflicted wound in many ways. There is a tremendous amount of fear and risk aversion to being judged or being misunderstood by people who work very hard to get technologies to market, but then the market doesn't really understand what they're about. And
Yeah.
so, and then, this idea of being seen, being perceived, being judged, that is the cost of entry into any sort of conversation and into any sort of relevance.
Yeah.
But
we call
go
that
ahead.
market identification, remember? Before you leap, we call it market identification.
Right.
And right now, I think with AI, it becomes a little bit easier. A lot of stuff is intuitive. For example, talk about a kid whose father had a shoe store, and he went to college, and he came home and said, Father, we've been doing it wrong all these years. We've been successful because everybody has a distribution. So he drove the normal curve on the board and said, now, 64% of the cases fall here, so therefore we should buy only this size of shoes.
Yeah.
I knew that intuitively. We just knew that everything has a distribution. And the father knew for years that he shouldn't buy small shoes if everybody's got, certain kind of food. So I think that what to me is testing the theories that we already have about the business and then letting the AI and the data inform us.
Yes.
Okay. So no longer do we have to guess, for example, about, I don't know, the number of people that's arriving in Austin, Texas. We don't have to wait to count it. We have ways to project that we can go to LinkedIn and create a data set about intentions of people talking to their friends or where they want to move or where they want to take their business. So I think it's more, and that's strategy to me. That's strategy to me. And I think that's very, very creative. I think you have to be creative with the data, and being creative with the data is the data interpretation. And I think that's very, very. We have known, for example, that if I just left my phone on the desk and it had no pressure, it's going to stay there. Well, that's the first law of physics, and then we can write an equation for it, right?
Right.
So I think that a lot of stuff we know that's intuitive, but I think the AI will give us a lot more insights into how to make decisions.
And it gives you a lot of information that's fast. And I think that sort of fast track is good. But then I also warn against, like, that is your baseline. And I would call that almost a control group, because if everything AI gave you, it could just as easily identically give to every competitor and substitute in your space. What you have to do is start there and then go pound some pavement and talk to people and figure out exactly where are these like little cracks in the market, where are these little opportunities and specific moments that you can then own. And be different enough so that you are the preferred brand. So Coca-Cola, there's a whole thing that Coca-Cola just decided that they were going to own the mascot of Christmas. And then,
well, that's interesting because economics, psychology, social, nobody has a theory of where Zuckerberg came from. Nobody predicted that. Nobody predicted where Southwest Airlines would come from, Herb Kelleher. Nobody predicted where Mackey came from with Whole Foods. We just do not have a model that will allow us to predict. Look, when I finished college, when you finished college, most of these enterprises were not here. All done by entrepreneurs, all done by creative people who, like you said, would solve a basic problem in the market, which we call market identification.
Right.
So I think your advantage in working with companies is not to teach them the traditional stuff, but let them fantasize about what they would like to do for people in the future.
Yeah.
And then run the mathematical models to see if it's needed. I think it's just absolutely fascinating. Now, what it means now, I think we've got to redo our business programs. I think at McCombs, which is one of the top schools in the world, number one in I think. We got to bring more stuff into about interpretation of data. What does it mean? I mean, if not, Andreas, for example, he works with electricity, right? And electricity behaves in a certain kind of way, right? And if you go back to Nikola Tesla, right, who thought that he could do wireless electricity, that would be very revolutionary. It would upset the entire thing that Andreas knows about. I think the same thing is true about people, but like you said, people will change their mind. So it's not like the physical sciences. It's not looking at whether, it's not looking at how things move around, the protons move around electricity, but we have the same kind of data now to let us look at individuals and say, you know what? We can project now that this will not happen. So we need to move away from that product.
Yeah.
I had the first seminar in Austin, I don't know, 10 years ago. I wrote an article in the Austin Business Journal talking about how we can predict the success of startups using AI.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of here now. And I think what you do is to say, and we had a big seminar on campus, and you can look it up. And and nobody was thinking about that now. But if you look at all the enterprises now, I mean, from McDonald's to engineering firms, with all the worldwide data, how you can combine a data set, for example, with weather, right? And housing, if you're in the housing market, or food. Anyway, so I think you're in a good spot, and you've got to be very, very creative to teach people how to let the data have a voice.
The data have a voice, but also I think the brand has to have a voice. And in the space of electricity and deep technology, I think there is a reticence to be visible, to have a point of view that is clear, compelling, and then invites people into an experience of the product, the service, whatever it is that your brand does, that it makes it easy to fall in love with it. So, there's been in clean energy generation, there's been this long-standing belief that the holy grail is price parity, right? Like if the electrons are the same price as each other, then that'll fix everything. And it turns out it hasn't been the magic bullet. What actually ended up being a more reliable accelerator of adoption is just the threat of an insufficient grid and the speed at which this can be spun up.
Right. Well, everybody wants the theory of equilibrium, where you can solve the equation with the equilibrium. But Schumpeter taught us that equilibrium could be disrupted.
Exactly. But for, say, people who want to buy solar for their rooftop, or switch again to a heat pump, sometimes like just having the same price for something that is the equivalent function ends up losing, because the subtleties of how humans make choices end up not factoring into the equation. So for example, the financing terms are not as advantageous, and it might be the same price, but like you got to pony up front, and that is going to lose you the business. Or because there is more complication in installing a new system than simply replacing the old one, you have to account for the discomfort and extra work of doing that. Or if you're doing B2B, which a lot of climate tech is, the political cost of sort of being the champion of change is very high. So how do you make it easy as the company trying to sell this new technology? How do you make it easy for the people who are championing this change inside to make it a no-brainer? And a lot of that stuff is within control and doesn't entirely depend on things like policy or those subtleties are about understanding the human side of business and what people need. Yeah.
It's about understanding. And we've been doing that research for years and years. I go back, Ibn Khaldun, that's one of my favorite people, and then of economics, history. I've always told all my classes, if you want to start an entrepreneur, go read business history, not just the numbers. Go read what the Rockefellers went through. Go read How I Built General Motors by Sloan, where you have all of the devils and the details in there, and not just the deck. So I've always thought that business history was the most important discipline in my area.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely helpful. And I think business history, it has a lot to teach.
Yeah.
Especially deep tech, which is a little bit camera shy. I think it's time to stop being camera shy. And there's a few lessons that every entrepreneur who goes into deep tech has to learn. One is you must have a point of view. Your point of view can't just be entirely just about your personality. You have to understand your audience, but ultimately you have to sort of give up on the idea that what is exciting to you as an engineer or a scientist, which is maybe all the features and, performance stats and stuff, are interesting to people at all. Like, why should they care? And you might have to sort of keep all the things that are exciting to you, to yourself, to cherish close to your heart, and then talk to people what they care about. Short. Yeah.
I think so. I think it's exciting. And what we're talking about now with all this data, how do we model human behavior? That's always been a question for economics, psychology, sociology. I mean, how do we model human behavior? Because they change their mind. A rock will not change his mind. A proton will not change his mind.
Right.
But Andreas would get mad and change his mind if we put him in the model. And upset the whole model, upset the whole damn model.
What makes you mad? I've never seen Andreas mad.
He would get angry, and that's why finance will always have issues, because we're using the models from physics for finance. But we need models that looks at the volatility of humans, and it's very, very interesting. Right.
Absolutely. Well, I wish we could keep talking, but time is up. So Michu, always a pleasure. Congrats on everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Leveraging AI to a new world. Maybe you can demonstrate to John Butler that you and a couple of your folks can build $1 trillion company with AI.
Maybe we'll do that. Yeah.
Well, she had the best class at McCombs. No case studies, just she had to do it herself, go get a technology, create the market, write a business plan, and do a deck in one semester.
I did that and did it multiple times. It was a really fun class. I'll just give a final plug, since we're doing plugs and this is media after all. The guide that I was alluding to is called Becoming Obvious: How to Unlock Mainstream Adoption for Climate Technologies. It is free to download at weareinhouse.com. I'm going to post the link in your post about it. It's free. You don't even have to put in your email address. It's just so that climate tech can sort of find its, kind of do a scan of all the things that are self-sabotage and maybe start to repair them, so that we can, maybe avoid catastrophe and get better products in the process.
There you go.
Yeah.
Johnny, take us away.
It's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. With a wink of an eye, my soul is turning in your hand, in your hand. And are you going away with no word of farewell? Will there be not a trace left behind? You know I could have loved you better. I didn't mean to be unkind. That was the last thing on my mind.
All right.
You didn't know that the old professor was a musician too, did you?
Well, everybody has these hidden talents. I'm glad that this is yours.
I think it runs in the tech world quite frankly.
Really?
Yeah, I think it does. In the creative world.
In the
Okay.
creative world.
All right,
Have a good
Andreas.
one.
Me
Bye-bye.
too. Great to
Thank
see
you.
you. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah,
Circle
stay in
back.
touch.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.